Has the time come for another GOAT of tennis, Rafael Nadal, to call it a day in his incredible career? Will he now join his rival-turned-bestie, Roger Federer, in retirement? Well, everything there is to say about Rafael Nadal has already been said, and then some. And what has been said, you might ask? Well, the fact that he picked up the sport early in his life, that he adopted a conventional left-handed style and developed his signature one-handed forehand, or that his technical prowess married well with his physical traits to make him one of the finest players in history. This has all been well documented. And what about his greatest achievements and the incredible numbers to his name? I mean, 22 Grand Slam titles, including a record 14 French Opens, 36 Masters 1000s titles, and 2 Olympic gold medals, among other stuff. We think it's safe to say that there is nobody like Rafa. Being the ATP World No. 1 for 209 weeks and having finished as the year-end No. 1 5 times is no joke. Surely you'd know that. Yet, every time any discussion about Nadal comes up now, all of that is ignored to focus solely on his fitness, which injury most recently kept him sidelined, and how he must be cherished, even if he makes early exits from tournaments big and small. But hold on a second, that's not how we would define Rafa's greatness, is it? And that's exactly where the problem lies. How we define his greatness. So, let's give it a better definition, shall we? The price of success Nadal has had to pay. Let's press the flashback button and go back to 2021, when Nadal lost for just the 3rd time in his career at the French Open. He exited in the semifinals, losing to eventual champion Novak Djokovic. He later pulled out of the Wimbledon Championships and also the Tokyo Olympics. And many people believed all that was because of scheduling reasons, right? But it later came to light that he was suffering from a recurring left foot injury, the Muller-Weiss syndrome, which Nadal's fans and tennis followers in general would soon come to hear a lot about, is a very rare foot condition and one that has troubled the Spaniard forever. And mind you, to have an incredible career like his, despite suffering from a foot condition like that, is something otherworldly. But then, that's what Nadal is, out of this world, isn't he? The 38-year-old took some rest, returned to action at the City Open, lost in the 3rd round, and then took the remainder of the year off. But that's not where the story ended. No, sir. Just when everyone began to wonder if his days at the top were done, he began 2022 by clinching the Australian Open, and followed it up by winning a record-extending 14th French Open title. That's how you shut down the haters and the ones who want you to hang your boots. It was his 22nd Grand Slam title, putting him well clear of Roger Federer and Djokovic. Fans were delighted to see him back at his best. Pundits were happy to acknowledge that his waning prowess was as fine as ever. And then we come to the story of how he pushed himself to achieve success, probably beyond the breaking point. But that is not something that worked out for him. Such was the setback. Why was the comeback not stronger than the setback? Nadal's French Open preparations in 2021 were disrupted by a foot injury as well as a debilitating rib injury. After winning his 14th title at Roland Garros, he admitted that his win was surprising to many, including him, because his preparations heading into the tournament were not ideal. It was a big surprise to be here, unexpected, and as everyone knows in the world of tennis, the preparation was not ideal. I had been off the practice courts for a month and a half with a stress fracture on my rib, and then I had a problem with my foot. It stayed there all the time. In Rome, it was difficult, but it's been amazing. I've had my doctor here with me, he then told Eurosport. And then Nadal came out with a revelation that shocked many, if you remember correctly. He was taking so many pain-killing injections that his foot was asleep during his matches. We played with no feeling in the foot with a pain-killing injection on the nerve. The foot was asleep, and that's why I was able to play, he had admitted. And he did not want to divulge how many injections translated into his title win in Paris. I guess we cannot even imagine it. So we'll just let that be. It's better you don't know, he had opined. And like dominoes, things began to unravel for the former world No. 1. Nadal suffered an abdominal tear just before Wimbledon that year. We clearly troubled by it, but still managed to make it to the semifinals before the issue became too serious to ignore. He withdrew from the tournament before his semifinal clash against Nick Kyrgios, took a much-needed break, and then competed in a handful of events at the end of the season without any remarkable results. Now, when was he supposed to make his comeback again? In 2023? 2023 was supposed to be when Nadal would return energized and write the latest chapter of his incredible career. But that it would eventually be the start of his final act in tennis is only clear in hindsight. Nadal's never-give-up attitude vs. string of injuries. A hip injury saw Nadal make it to the 1st round at the 2023 Australian Open. He promised to take his recovery one day at a time, but things did not look well for him. And as they say, sometimes your best is also not good enough. Despite doing his best, he was not on the comeback path and announced his withdrawal from the Indian Wells and Miami Masters. Then came the news of his withdrawal from the Monte Carlo Masters, followed by the French Open, the grass swing, and the North American hard court court season. A string of disappointments for Rafa and his fans really had everyone counting the days before he decided to call it a day. During this time, he exited the ATP Top 10 for the first time since April 2005, which ended the longest top 10 streak, 912 consecutive weeks in ATP history. He also fell out of the top 100 by the end of the year, and his freefall continued. In September, he held a press conference and said that he was targeting a return to the men's tour in 2024. He also hinted it might be the last season of his professional career, and that felt like 1,000 knives in the chests of Rafa fans all over the world. The 22-time major winner competed at the Brisbane International, where he made a quarterfinal exit, but also sustained a muscle injury. This led to another stint on the sidelines. But his goal for the year was clear: get fit in time for the French Open, followed immediately by the Paris Olympics. And we have to give it up to the legend, who despite such major setbacks, never gave up and never backed down. Returning to his best one last time to win Roland Garros and another Olympic medal sounded like the perfect script, but life likes throwing curveballs. As planned, he was back in action for the clay swing, but all he could take home was participation certificates in Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, and the French Open. But Nadal was too damn determined to get some momentum, and for that, he went down a few levels and played the Nordea Open, an event he last took part in 2005. He reached the final in the singles and semifinals in the doubles, and yet there were doubts about how he would fare against better opponents. Because, let's face it, the tournament did not have players of the highest level. Those doubts were answered at the Summer Games, where he was drawn to face Novak Djokovic in the second round thanks to his fall in the rankings over the last few years. Barring a small period in the second set, the Spaniard was well beaten by the Serbian. His doubles campaign alongside Carlos Alcaraz also ended without a medal to show for, and thus came crashing his dream of doing something special in what he hinted would be his final year on the ATP Tour. And although Nadal has withdrawn to participate in the US Open this year, saying that he might not be able to give his 100%, we will still see the legend at the Laver Cup in Berlin this year. So, folks and Nadal fans, don't write him off just yet. We are hopefully going to see him lift that cup. Over the years, Nadal has shown resilience that has been admired by everyone, studied by many, and replicated by very few. His almost stubborn nature of bulldozing his way through problems while adding to his trophy cabinet is part of tennis folklore now. And yet, that could be his undoing. Stars, be it in sports or other walks of life, rarely walk into the sunset on a high. Their self-belief, which served them well in their careers, makes them pursue one final moment of glory, which is clearly well beyond their reach. Federer is a good example of another tennis star from the same generation who struggled with injuries and had to retire by playing what is essentially an exhibition event. Nadal is also set to take part in the Laver Cup this year, and he will be wise to hang up his boots at the same event his frenemy Federer did 2 years ago. Well, that's not how we want to see Nadal too, but it seems like the most plausible step for him. And it's not us who are saying that, it's the Spanish legend himself who believes that. And when a legend himself is sure about a decision, it takes the world to convince you to go in the opposite direction. But I guess Nadal has had enough, and frankly, he had done enough. You don't have to provide anything else to the world champion. But mind you, his last few years dealing with injuries do not diminish everything he has achieved. There is nothing that would make his career look any less impressive than it already is. But the conversation about Nadal, whether he is playing or not, has completely moved from what he can do on the court to how best he can play without another injury derailing him. And that is what hurts Nadal fans the most. The writing on the wall has never been clearer for an athlete in recent history. The heart will always want more, but it's time for him to view the larger picture with his head and bring the curtains down. There's more to his life beyond a professional career. He is a father now, has a family he can spend more time with, and his pal Federer can attest to that. And not only that, he runs a very successful tennis academy. And who knows, his contributions to tennis could continue when he dons his coaching gloves. Not all great players become great coaches, but the likes of Juan Carlos Ferrero and Goran Ivanisevic have shown that it is possible. But first things, Nadal deserves one last moment in the spotlight, but a long-drawn goodbye, which we seem to already be in, is painful to watch. And while goodbyes are hard, and the tennis world knows how hard this one will be, we know it's time for adios, amigo.